And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. It's good to be back here with you. We were off last week. I was off trekking up a mountain, second highest mountain in Arizona with a friend and a client, and had a great time. I would share photos, but we've got a lot of questions to answer. And so I'm going to forego sharing any of those photos so that we can get into your questions. Today's session is an Ask Me Anything session, and received a good number of questions and a bunch of great questions. And I've got to tell you, any one of these questions, we could easily spend the entire session pursuing and talking about. We're not going to do that. I want to try and get through all of the questions if I can, while at the same time giving you some good, useful, practical answers. And so we're going to dive right in and make our way through them. And our first question comes to us from Frank Tricino in Austin, Texas. Frank was one of our featured artists here a month and a half or 2 months ago. And the question is about certificates of authenticity. And it's a good question. Who provides the certificate of authenticity, the gallery or the artist? What info is usually on the certificate? And would it be of any value to get it notarized? So it's a good question. And certainly if you have thought about working with galleries, this has been a consideration for you. What about the certificate of authenticity? And you've heard other artists or seen them providing them. My experience, and I'll tell you the way we handle certificates in our gallery, and that is we don't. We do not use them. I do not find them to be of value for us. And in essence, our gallery is dealing mostly with original works. We're not doing a lot of editions or fine art prints or that kind of thing, which is where typically you would see more of a need for a certificate. You want to know that this reproduction of a piece of artwork is an authorized reproduction. That's kind of where the certificate of authenticity comes from. You have indeed bought something that was authorized by the artist. In my gallery, where I'm focusing mostly on originals, your signature and the fact that I'm showing it in my gallery is really all our clients need. They trust us that this is an original, that we stand behind it. Our clients just don't really ask for them. I can think of maybe a couple, 2 or 3 instances in 20 years of being in business where a client has asked for a certificate of authenticity. And I'm going to have everybody on mute while I'm doing this, so we don't get any feedback. I can unmute you when the time comes. So we don't use them. Our clients don't ask for them, and I somewhat find the whole concept of a certificate of authenticity a little bit baffling, because ultimately, if you think about it, if someone is sophisticated enough to copy your artwork and put an unauthorized version of it out there, I've got to imagine that they are also sophisticated enough to fake a certificate of authenticity. How would anyone know that this was, not an authorized certificate? And so, I can understand the appeal, like I say, with reproductions, but we don't use them. If you're if your focus is on originals, I would suggest that unless your gallery is clamoring for a certificate, might not be something that you need to waste energy or time producing. Next question from Lisa. We're going to keep rolling here. If there's a little time at the end, I'll let you all hop in with comments and we can discuss a little further. But Lisa asked, what's the general guideline for pricing a painting? I know you've mentioned price per square inch concept, but is this the same for any medium, acrylic versus oil, for example? So boy, here is one that not only could we talk about for an entire session, but we could probably talk for several days about coming up with the right pricing strategy for your artwork. It's a challenge. We're not going to do that, but I would just say a couple of quick things here. One is that the general concept that I use for helping artists find their pricing strategy and kind of coming up with a plan for pricing is the same for all artists, regardless of medium. But that doesn't mean that the values are going to be the same regardless of what you're doing. What it means is my approach to coming up with that pricing is going to be the same. And that is that a lot of times we kind of think that somehow the pricing is going to settle itself, that as more demand comes for my work, I'll be able to start inching the pricing up. And as the pricing goes up, then doors will open for me to be able to show my artwork in additional venues. And there's just kind of this cycle that goes on. If that's our approach, what typically happens is we end up kind of getting stuck. I don't know very many artists who right out of the gate are selling their work at a pace that demands an increase in price. Most of the time, especially initially, we're really working to build a following for the work and exposure and awareness. And so with that in mind, I would kind of suggest coming at pricing the other way around. And that is to say, I want to think about where I want to be showing my artwork. What are the kinds of venues I want to be showing my artwork in? And then I would do market research of those kinds of venues. And I would select some specific venues that I want to target my work to. And I would see how the other artists in those venues are pricing their work. And I would want my work to be priced comparably. There can sometimes be this sense that, well, lower prices means increased sales. And kind of classic economic theory would tell us that would be the case. But you'll actually find in the art world, that's not the case. If I'm priced too low, venues and particularly galleries are going to look askance at your work and say, well, I like it, but the value is too low. It's just not going to fit in with what we're doing. We can't afford to hang it on the wall because if we sell it, it's not going to generate enough revenue. Likewise, if you're targeting art shows and festivals, yes, there is going to be competition there, but if I'm the lowest price in that venue, that actually might not give me an advantage. It might lead collectors to say, and typically will lead them to say, well, I like it, but the prices are so low. This artist must not be very well established, or maybe there's something wrong with it that I'm just not seeing. And those kinds of sentiments can really be a damper on your sales. And so you don't want to be the highest priced artist in the market that you're targeting either. You want to come somewhere in the mid-range. And so that means when I'm doing my research, if I'm working in acrylic or oil or watercolor, I want to look for other artists in those kinds of venues that I want to be targeting that likewise are working in acrylic or oil or watercolor, and I want to price comparably to those artists. Now, you're going to see a range of different price points as you're doing that kind of research, but you just want to kind of get a sense of that range and figure out where you could price your work to fit comfortably in. And I will tell you, as a gallery owner, when I'm looking at a new artist's work, my tendency is, there are times where I'll look at an artist's work and I'll just love it so much and want to show it that maybe a conversation will start and I say, I like it. The price is too low. Let's think about, do you have some flexibility on that pricing? In other words, I'm deferring to the artist initially and starting a conversation. But 9 times out of 10, when a new artist is coming to me, I'm going to accept what they're telling me in terms of price point. There's not going to be a lot of discussion. I'm going to kind of go with what their experience has been. And then as sales start to kick in, then we could start to have discussions about pricing. But so that was a long way around of saying that I just want to price to the market that I'm targeting. And you're going to see more of a variety of price points between different kinds of venues, the artist studio, an art show and festival, local art show and festival versus a regional or well-established art show and festival, galleries, different kinds of galleries in different regions. You're going to see more of a range as you look at those venues than you would just looking at, is it an oil painting or an acrylic or a watercolor or a bronze sculpture? And so that's where I would suggest we start that process. Much more we could talk about, obviously, with pricing, but hopefully that gives us a little bit of an idea to start thinking about it. The next question comes from Sue in Fort Lauderdale. And Sue asks, is it necessary to name my pieces? I find it difficult to come up with meaningful names. Sue, I would suspect that many here can sympathize with that sentiment, that sometimes it feels like it is more work to come up with the title for a piece of artwork than it was to create that piece of artwork. I understand that challenge. If you'd wanted to be a writer, you would have been a writer, not a painter or a sculptor. But I will tell you that in my experience, titles can make a huge difference. They help us, when a client is encountering a piece of artwork, they're having an experience and they're starting to kind of try to understand you and your work and the background. And they are kind of wanting to get some context. When I'm having conversations with collectors, they're asking questions about, yes, the artwork itself, but about you, where you're from, what your inspiration is. And the more I can kind of give them and the story that I can tell and the engagement, the more likely they are to have a strong reaction and connection to that artwork and ultimately make a purchase. I mean, that's my job and my staff's job as we're interacting with our clientele, is to really enhance the experience and fortify those connections. That's why we have a physical gallery that they can visit, and we aren't just selling online. And even online, we're working to recreate some of that same experience in the artist statements and biographies and in our marketing that we do. And so, yes, a title is a great place to start with that. I have included here, and you can see down at the bottom, and of course you can't click on this link, nor can you probably, it's so long to try and write it out. But if you just, right underneath the green link there, if you Google creating titles for your artwork, red.blog, you will find an article. The first one that'll come up will be an article that I wrote some time ago on this topic. I give you some thoughts and some examples of titles and some ways that you might approach coming up with titles. And then there are some great comments and ideas from other artists on red.blog about their approach to titling their artwork. And I would suggest that would be a good place to kind of start this process. But let me put it this way. I don't accept artwork into my gallery that is untitled, number 421. My response to that is, let's give it a title. If you think about it, our clients want to feel like the piece of artwork that they're considering is the greatest piece that you have ever created, that it is your masterpiece, your masterwork. It's the one they're going to be investing in and buying. Untitled does not send that message. And so I would highly recommend that we put some effort into coming up with good titles. And most of the artists that I'm working with will kind of come up with a plan, a strategy for titling their artwork. And, we know that after hundreds of pieces of artwork, one, it's inevitable that you're going to start repeating some titles. Two, that it's going to be harder and harder to come up with unique titles. And you know what? They don't all have to be unique. There's no law that says you can't repeat a title on a piece of artwork. And so we just want to work towards a strategy that allows us to do that in the simplest way possible. But again, that article that I referenced will give you some good ideas and some good examples. Our next question comes from John Snyder in Los Angeles. And John asks, I've run into several modern artists, California, New York, that do not sign their paintings. They're told by their representatives that your art should be so well established that they know it's you. Is this a new trend? Ah, yes, the trends of the art world, and especially the modern art world. There are always some interesting ideas that sneak in. I've not encountered this. I would resist it very strongly if someone suggested it to me. I should be well established enough that people just recognize my work and know my name. Well, that's great, but am I well established enough to be able to accomplish that? Makes no sense at all to me. My clients want your signature, as we discussed earlier. That's one of the ways that they know that this was an original work of art that was created by an artist that they're interested in and may ultimately end up collecting. I would think that this could run into a multitude of problems down the line, 20, 30 years from now, while you're still actively creating, and certainly 40, 60, 80 years from now, as you have gone on to be world famous, and the curators want to acquire your. This makes me shudder a little bit, and I just am vehemently opposed to this idea of not signing your artwork. And I don't see what benefit you get out of it either. If every artist now has decided they're not going to sign their artwork, it just I'm just not even going to say anymore. It just seems so clear to me that this is a bad idea, John. I would highly encourage you to consider continuing to sign your artwork. Misty asks, and Misty is from North Carolina, Brasstown, North Carolina. Can you tell me exactly what a submission pack should look like when approaching a gallery? Here's another one that would take much more than we can give it justice to in the time that we have available. I'm going to give a shameless plug here. Many of you have received an email from me inviting you to my 4-hour workshop. It's the Starving to Successful workshop online course. If this is a question that you have, this course is perfect for you because it's all about kind of coming up with the preparation and the approach. Now, I will tell you that the submission pack has certainly changed over the years. And I'll tell you what I'm seeing more and more, and what I'm recommending to artists who are thinking about approaching galleries, and that is to go digital, create a digital portfolio of your work, and that you would also have a digital PDF copy. So a digital PDF copy of your portfolio, PDF of your biography, and a PDF of your artist statement and resume. Those can then be emailed to galleries. And so nothing was ever printed, nothing was ever put together in an envelope. It's all done digitally. Or it can be presented to a gallery on an iPad if you're visiting the gallery in person. And that is what I am now recommending, is a digital format. So again, I just encourage you, if you get an opportunity to take that online class, hop in. I will fully answer. It takes me 4 hours to do it, to answer that question. What do I need to be doing to successfully and professionally submit my artwork to galleries? Patricia asks, and let me pull Patricia's question up here. Patricia is from Florida and says, and was also one of our featured artists in the online critique group. What do you think about acrylic paintings done on wood panels? Just visited an art exhibit today, terrific art, but have a nagging feeling about the materials. Wonder if the paintings will hold up on wood. Is this done often? And again, this is a good question, kind of thinking about all of the different options that you have as an artist when it comes to media, substrates, how you're going to be presenting your artwork. And certainly, we want to be thinking about the quality of materials. We want to think about the durability. To a certain extent, we want to think about the longevity. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had a discussion about Edward Hopper, and mentioned the fact specifically that he wasn't particularly concerned about the archival quality of his artwork. He was going to leave that to the restorers and the conservators of the future to deal with that when he became famous. And I think that that's a good balance to kind of strike. You want to be thinking about, well, what's the experience that my buyers and collectors are going to have as they are buying my artwork, as it's in their collection during the course of their lifetime and my lifetime. I want to make sure it's going to stand up. And beyond that, I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about it. And certainly, if I've got a choice in terms of, the investment I'm going to make into my artwork and my viability as an art business, I'm not going to be spending thousands of dollars on materials with the idea that I want this to last for a century or a millennium. I want to be thinking that, kind of striking that balance. Now, I do agree, Patricia, that I would be a little bit careful about using materials that have potentially a higher likelihood of degradation in the course of the next several decades. And certainly untreated wood, and I've seen this too, where maybe an artist has an idea that they're going to use something that they pick up from the Home Depot, throw it on the bandsaw and cut it up and start painting on it. And there's a reason why most artists are using canvas or artist panels, because we kind of know what to anticipate in terms of the materials that are being used and their longevity. And so we would want to be careful about introducing anything else into the mix that could present some problems. Or if we do, we want to be thinking about how can I treat these materials in such a way that they will have a higher likelihood of lasting longer. And so I do have several artists who are working on wood box panels or other wood materials. But they're doing exactly what I suggested. They're coating them with our kind of archival quality substrates, making sure that the acids can be a real issue with wood. The other issue you can have with wood is that it can warp and bow. And so I wouldn't want to go into creating a body of artwork on an experimental surface that I'm not sure what's going to happen to it over the course of a decade in various environments where there may be increased or decreased humidity involved and all those kinds of things. I would be hesitant to be very experimental in that regard unless I was very confident about the outcome. Stick with what you know and stick with what other artists are doing. This question from Robert George in St. Louis, Missouri. Let me get Robert up here. Please address the harsh financial reality of the art world. If a serious gallery has revenues of, say, $500,000 across 30 artists and, say, 5 are dead, each living artist does not earn much of a living after commissions. But there is a visibility and access to collectors in the market. The gallery survives, hopefully. But what is there for the artist to hope for? So we teach, we freelance, we take gig work, odd jobs in the night shift. How long a shot is it truly to a life selling enough art to matter? And appreciate your frankness and expertise. Well, thank you, Robert. And it's a great question. I highly encourage, if you followed my blog and these sessions, I agree that we want to be very frank and realistic about the art market and the realities of the art market. And it is an uphill battle. I do not know of many artists who have, fallen into success where they were just creating such great work that their career took off and they became wildly famous and successful. If you are looking for a get rich quick kind of scheme, the art world is not the place to look, in my experience. It is going to take a lot of work and effort, and you're exactly right. Now, let me address some of the specifics there. Robert, you gave a specific layout, a gallery selling $500,000 worth of art. Let me respond to that first. There's going to be a range of different galleries in different markets selling different amounts. 500,000 is an interesting number. Certainly, I would say that there are a good number of galleries out there who don't achieve that in annual sales, but there are a lot of galleries that do more than that. Second, 30 artists in the gallery. That's a pretty good number. That's pretty close to what I'm carrying in each of my 2 galleries. 5 are dead. Well, some galleries do show a deceased artist's work. A lot of galleries don't, though, and my gallery does not. That's not something that I am particularly interested in. I am very interested in artists who are early in their careers to mid-career. I want to have the relationship with the artist. That's a big part of what I want to do. I want to promote artists who are growing their art businesses and growing their careers. And I think you'd find that a lot of galleries like mine out there are kind of in that same vein, that we want to focus on living artists where we can generate relationships, not only with the artist directly, but between the collector and the artist, and so we can have the artist at the show. And so in my case, I'm not paying any dead artists. Everybody's alive, and working to build their career. But you're right. In whatever my level of sales are, it's not only is it going to be divided between the 30 or so artists that I'm representing, but it's not going to be divided evenly between those artists. I'm going to have some artists who are selling more regularly, maybe at higher price points, and that they're going to get a higher share of those total revenues that are being created. And it will also vary from year to year. And so what does that mean to you as an artist? Well, a couple of things. One is, and this is what I recommend, is that you're thinking of long-term strategy and thinking about trying to create a successful business as an artist, to create a living for yourself so that you can put more of your focus into your art and your career, and that it can be self-sustaining. It's probably not going to work to just have one gallery representing you. If that's the math is just not going to work in your favor, because you're right. I'm only going to be getting a certain percentage of those sales, and the gallery is going to take their commission. And at the end of the day, those sales are probably not going to be enough to support my living. I want to be showing then in multiple galleries, and that's where the math starts to turn and work in our favor. Likely as you're getting started in your career and starting to show in galleries, your inventory production ability, your ability to create paintings or sculptures or photographs, fiber art, whatever your art form is, your ability to produce is probably going to be significantly greater than your ability to generate sales for that artwork. That means you're going to be building excess inventory. And that then means that as you have excess inventory, you will have the opportunity to reach out to additional galleries and secure additional representation. And the successful artists that I'm working with are typically showing in anywhere between, probably, as I look at some of my artists, some of my most successful artists, they may only be showing in 3 or 4 galleries because those galleries are selling at a rapid pace. But some of the artists that I'm working with, in order to achieve that level of success, are going to be showing in 7, 8, 10 galleries. And creating enough work to sustain those galleries. And the advantage of that is that I talked about kind of the instability of the market, that some years I'll sell more for some artists than other years. Well, by diversifying and showing your work in a variety of galleries, you increase the likelihood of generating a more steady level of sales. You kind of get the averages starting to work in your favor. But if it sounds like it's a little bit of work, again, I don't mean to be a broken record here, but it is. It is going to take sustained effort. It's going to take time to build those relationships. Some of them aren't going to work out the way you would hope to. It's going to take a lifetime of work and effort. And in a lot of ways, I would liken what you're trying to achieve as an artist, as a visual artist, to what I see among other creative entrepreneurs, writers, musicians, actors. You're right. The odds in any one of those professions and in our profession are fairly staggering if you start thinking about them at the beginning. But what we also realize is that with some persistence and some sustained effort, and with some time on our side, we can start to work toward building a successful business. And, the harsh reality being that because it is a little bit of a challenging business, it's those who persist and put forth a steady effort to continue to build their business over the years and make some real sacrifices. It starts to weed out much of your competition in that regard. And again, my experience is just that as an artist is dedicated to their work, dedicated to producing the very best art that they can, and putting a sustained effort into promoting and building relationships with galleries, and has a kind of lifelong commitment to it, is there a guarantee of success? No, but you dramatically increase your likelihood of being able to build a successful, sustainable career as you put forward that continued effort. So again, not a get rich quick scheme here. Anyone who came to the art world looking for instant fame and success probably is going to encounter some disappointment. But as we sustain our efforts, we can get there. And by the way, that's not true just of artists. That is true of and musicians. I mean, it's true of any business. It's true of gallery owners. I mean, most galleries fail. Most small businesses, restaurants, shops, you name it. You've got to be persistent in order to be successful. If we'd wanted an easy path, maybe we would have gone into the corporate world and looked for something stable like our parents wanted us to, right? That's not what we did. We chose to pursue art. And so it's going to take some effort on our part. Juanita asks, I spend time in 2 locations. I can't figure out a way to have a buy feature on my website and be able to immediately ship paintings, as I would not have quick access to my inventory. Yes, I can see how this could be a challenge, and I can sympathize a little bit with it because, I also have 2 locations, and there are some complexities that come into play. Having 2 remote locations from one another, there's some running back and forth that occurs. I'm fortunate that my 2 locations happen to be, just a little over 3 hours apart from one another. But if you've got a great distance, yes, I could see how that would be a problem, especially if you've got a significant inventory in one or the other or both of those locations. If clients buy something, they're not going to want to wait 6 or 8 months for you to get back to that other location to ship it to them. And so just some spitballing here and some off the cuff thoughts. I mean, the way I manage that is that I happen to have staff available in both locations, that can handle those kinds of issues. But really that may be what you need to think about doing is if you can find someone in the location that you could say, hey, listen, friend, neighbor, fellow artist, here's my situation. I am back and forth. I have my inventory locked in my studio. Would you be willing, and I'd be willing to pay some small amount to have you help me with this, that if I sell something, could you go to the studio for me, pick it up and drive it to the UPS store or my local shipper, and kind of get someone put in place in each of those locations that you could rely on to be able to do that. And what we found is we can have a window of about 2.5 weeks from a time a purchase occurs until it's delivered to the client and not have them upset. And so, if I can figure out some system where I could get somebody to help me in each of those locations for when I'm not there, that could be a potential. I mean, really, from what I can see, the only potential solution short of buying a big trailer and hauling all of your inventory back and forth, which would present a host of other challenges and be probably much more expensive. I would think that having someone with access to your studio, and then the other thing that you would then have to do is have your studio very well organized so that it is easy for someone to find the inventory. That means we're going to have to mark the paintings or sculpture in such a way that you can say, this is the piece that is sold. I need you to go to my studio. This is exactly where it'll be located, and this is what it's going to say on it. It's going to have a tag or something on the back. This is what it looks like, so that they could very easily access it. And then we've had increasing luck using the FedEx store or the UPS store to handle shipments of artwork for us. They're becoming, or early on, I would have been a little hesitant to recommend it, but now they've kind of got the system figured out for doing a lot of that shipping. And so they should be able to handle those logistics for you if you can figure out how to get it from the studio to the shipper. Joe asks, and this is a question I've seen kind of in various versions several times. I'm going to make a quick answer to it, and that is, what is your take on NFTs as a gallery owner, and from your son's viewpoint as an artist? My father is a painter, and so maybe just from my perspective as an art lover. And for those of you who aren't aware of NFTs, it's a little hard not to be, because it's kind of a fad, I would say. Heaven help me for saying fad on that, but it's a non-fungible token, which in essence means it is a digital file that can't be easily duplicated, and kind of speaks to some of those questions about a certificate of authenticity. My take on them is, I think it's an interesting exercise that's going on in the art world and the music world right now. It's worth reading up a little bit to understand what they are. And certainly there have been some artists who have experienced some success, some financial success, as they have had the opportunity to experiment with NFTs. My sense, though, is that anything like this that leads to a quick buck, let's say, that's kind of what the sense of what I'm getting of what's happening. One is that there's going to be a kind of gold rush experience with it, where everybody's going to rush into it. That's going to dilute the value of the NFTs that are being created, or whatever the fad happens to be. And I suspect that this is going to, that we won't be talking a lot about this within the next few years. My clients, from my experience, are not interested in having a string of ones and zeros that supposedly was created by an artist. They're interested in having artwork that they can enjoy and experience in their homes or workplaces. That's what I'm selling, and maybe short-sighted on my part, but I'm just not. I know what my expertise are, and it's not in NFTs, and so that's not where my focus is. Not discouraging you from exploring it yourself, and who knows, if you become a multimillionaire thanks to NFTs, please let me know and how you did it, and I'll be interested in hearing that story. Andrea from Scottsdale, Arizona, a local artist for us, says, Jason, for my works on gallery-wrapped canvases, what is the preference for the edges? Painting them using a color from the artwork, leaving the edge raw, which would have the white gesso. I don't like to paint the image around the edge for all the detail required. It takes way more effort and also has the work look busy. It kind of looks slick when high-end galleries show in their spaces with all artwork white edged. However, my art would look great in the floating frames. I have one to show my work. Though I don't sell my art framed, it looks lovely when the edge is painted, catching the color in the float. Please provide your thoughts. So again, it's a big issue that we could unpack and spend some time on. But this is one of those issues where we want somebody to tell us the right answer, right? Andrea, you were asking for the right answer. What is the right way to present my unframed artwork, or should I frame it? And the reality is that when we're looking for the answer for a question like this, it could be framing, could be how I base my sculptures, could be the sizes that I'm creating, even subject matter that I'm selecting. What I would suggest to you is that we're going to be disappointed when we kind of look for those kinds of right answers, because there is not a right or a wrong. There's just a choice to be made. And my suggestion is that when it comes to this, you would want to think about, what do I feel is going to create the best aesthetic experience for my artwork in terms of presentation? And then I would decide that. It's not, again, not that there's a right or wrong answer, it's just that I am the artist. I get to decide, and then I would stick with my decision. And you could come into my gallery, either of my galleries today, and look around at the different artists that I'm showing. Some frame, some don't. And those that don't, and even those that do, everyone has a little bit different idea of what's going to work well. But what's most effective is when you encounter their work and you see a consistency across the presentation. And that you are able to see that they have they have answered this question for themselves and come up with an approach to presenting their artwork and are being consistent about it. And as the artist has done this, your clients will trust you. Now, there may be times where a client says, well, you chose to leave it unframed and you did the edges raw, or you painted a solid color, and I still like the work, but that presentation doesn't appeal to me. Well, as a gallery owner, I can say, well, let's find a solution for you that works. Let's talk to our framer and make a modification. We can fix that. But most of the time, that's not what happens. Most of the time, the clients will just accept it. They like your work, they like the presentation, and they'll buy it. It might not have been, if they'd had the choice, it might not have been what they would have picked. But once they see it and they love your work, they will take it and accept it and buy it. And it's the consistency and the clarity of your vision and your confidence in your work that helps us get there and start to create collectors. We did not do it. We did not get to nearly all of the questions. I think I got to about 2/3 of your questions, and there were some great ones I didn't get to. We do this Ask Me Anything session in the critique group every third Wednesday. And so we'll have another one of these sessions in a month's time. And if I didn't get to your question, please submit it again. I'd love another shot at taking those questions. But thanks to all of you who did submit questions. We did not have a chance to have any discussion this time. But we will be back here next week for a critique session with a featured artist. And so stay tuned for that. Join us next week, and then join us in the future Ask Me Anything sessions. And eventually, all of your questions will be answered. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks so much for